I'm going to call to order the January 2022 Executive Committee meeting. We're convened as of 12:01 p.m. I would respectfully ask everyone attending this meeting to mute yourself until you are recognized. I will now call the roll. Busick is here. First Vice Chair Geisinger.
Here.
Second Vice Chair Catlin.
Here.
Secretary Sloan.
Here.
Treasurer Whitmore. You are muted, Troy. I see you, but.
Let me try it again. I'm here.
Yay. Good job. Okay, so we have the executive committee here. I don't see any other, am I missing any other directors? I don't see any other directors. We have GM CEO Johnson. We have our legal counsel, Melanie Snyder. We've got Jillian, Randy, Barbara, John, and Michael Davies. Thank you all, staff, for being here as well. We're going to move on through our agenda because we've got some things to discuss, mostly, I think, under other matters. But anyway, we're going to open this up to public comment for the very first time in the history of RTD. So the public comment period is a new addition to our committee agendas, and I would like to open it to anyone who would like to address this executive committee. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please either raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. Staff will unmute you when it's your turn to speak. If you are dialed in, please press *6 to toggle your mute settings. Speakers should begin their remarks by stating their names, and each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. I want to also recognize Director Eric Davidson just logged in. So I don't see anybody here. Ms. McManus, do you see any members of the public signing in for comment?
No, there are no external attendees at this time.
All righty then. With no participants in the queue, I will close the public comment period. We're going to move on now to recommended actions. And we have one recommended action on the agenda this afternoon, and it relates to the internal audit consulting and advisory services contract. That recommendation is for the board of directors to authorize the general manager and CEO to engage in a solicitation for a professional services firm for the provision of internal audit, consulting, and advisory services. This action is recommended by the members of the Audit Ad Hoc Committee, Directors Peggy Catlin, Eric Davidson, and Bobby Deschel. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And who is that? Peggy? How about a second?
Yeah.
Is that Lynn?
Yeah.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll ask if there are any no votes with regard to this action item. And seeing no votes, this comes out of the executive committee with unanimous approval. Next is our January board meeting agenda review. This is still a function of the executive committee is approving the board meeting agenda. There's going to be one addition to the agenda, so any motion to do that is going to have to contain this change. So what we're doing is we're adding an executive session to the agenda, and I did this. I asked GM CEO Johnson if we could add an executive session so we could have a brief discussion on the status of the collective bargaining agreement, and that will be the purpose of the executive session. So I need to know if there's a motion to move the January board agenda with the addition of the executive session to the board on the 25th.
Mr. Chair, before you
I'm sorry.
take a motion, I would like to point out an item that needs to be modified. When you look down at the draft board agenda, which is on package, well, it's actually the agenda itself. There's not a package page number. It's the second page. And it says item 7, it says audit committee report. That should actually read audit ad hoc committee report.
Good catch.
Thank you.
Okay.
Noted.
So here we go. So the motion we needed to move the January board agenda forward to the board meeting on the 25th with the addition of the executive session and with a revision to item 7, where audit committee report should read audit ad hoc committee report. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Whitmore, a second.
Second.
Sloan, got it. Okay. Cool. Any discussion on this? Seeing no hands raised, are there any no votes in moving this agenda forward as modified? Seeing none, that passes out of the executive session unanimously. Next, we're going to move into our discussion, hang on, regarding ad hoc committees. So we've got a couple of different ad hoc committees. I'm going to be adding one next Tuesday as well. We'll talk a little bit about that. Before I get started on that, though, I had some discussion with GM CEO Johnson, and there's an external committee that the board appoints people to. There are several. The one I'm talking about is the CDOT Liaison Committee. I don't see a need to continue that. I don't see a need for us to do that. We'd have no reciprocal CDOT person coming forward. And in the past, there's not been reports coming forward or much attendance from the people that have been assigned, and researching it with CDOT, they don't know what it's about either. So, and that was with not only the commissioner that I know, but also with staff at CDOT. So Ms. McManus, you have your hand raised.
So the sole purpose of that person was to interface with the CDOT commissioners in putting together the once-a-year meeting that has been ongoing for as long as I've been on the board. So it doesn't matter if someone is assigned to that. My team can still work with CDOT and put that forward. And if that meeting is no longer needed, then we can work on that as well. Thank you.
Okay, I get it now. Yeah, that was unclear to me. So I think that can always just fall to the chair of the board, who can then delegate to other people. So let's eliminate that off the list, at least. It doesn't seem like there's only one reason for it. So I don't think we need to have a separate committee just to do that. So, okay. That's my prerogative, I guess. Peggy Catlin.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I may have been looking at an older list, but is there still some sort of function for the Jefferson Parkway?
Yes.
Is there? Okay, I didn't know if that had dissolved or not. And similarly,
Oh, I think there is. Let me step back. Ms. McManus, I don't have that list in front of me, but I believe there was a Jefferson Parkway.
It's on package page 11 with all the committees in Jefferson County Parkway. Public Highway Authority is listed there. Shelley Cook and Marjorie Sloan being the designated. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
The purpose of my question was, does the Jefferson Parkway Authority still exist?
Well, that's a good question.
That was the reason for my.
Last year, I was also the representative, and there was no meeting. Occasionally, I Google to see if I missed a meeting or missed notice. I think they haven't dissolved, but
Okay.
they're at least on hiatus. I also think it's funny that I'm the representative, because they probably think I'm a mole on the Jefferson Parkway board, but I will do my best to represent RTD if they do ever convene.
Yeah.
And then I had a question about another one of those committees.
Okay, go ahead.
Am I jumping the gun?
No, that's fine.
There's one on C470, I think, or I'm not really sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are the designee.
Okay.
for the E470
No,
Public Highway Authority. Oh, C470. Well, let me check. Jefferson County Parkway. E470. I don't see anything here for C470.
Okay, I might be mixing something up. Thank you. That didn't mean to. Yes, I am on the E470, and I had all morning today. Trail.
Yeah.
I'll fill
You're
you
good.
in. Okay, Troy's my
Great.
alternate.
Great, thank you. Treasurer Whitmore.
Just one other note on those appointments. I don't know if it's got changed yet, but we need to delete ACED. The organization does not exist in that name anymore. It's now AC Rep, ACREP. And I think, Vince, you probably are the rep to that. I think I might be alternate. I'm on that exec committee,
Right.
so we don't need to be the rep. Wouldn't be probably appropriate. So that
Right,
might be
yeah. So maybe when that comes out, yeah, ACED is the name is now changed to Adams County Regional Economic Partnership, ACREP.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for catching that, Troy. Okay. All right, so we're going to move into the ad hoc committee discussion, and we can talk about any of this stuff. So for 2022, we've got an audit ad hoc committee and the redistricting ad hoc committee, which we anticipate will be ending at the end of March. And I'm going to be adding a Tabor ad hoc committee at our board meeting to start looking at that and seeing what, if anything, we need to be doing with regard to the impacts Tabor will have on RTD in the future. Anybody want to share any additional information with regard to these committees? I know some of you people are probably on these committees.
This is our chance to defend ourselves. I think they're all worthy, Vince, and needed. Obviously, we've got two that are in action right now, so I got no heartburn whatsoever about them.
First, Vice Chair Geisinger.
I just was gonna say I'm glad to hear the Tabor committee is being set up. That I was in the advisory committee for Reimagine the other day, and the consultants have done some great work on Tabor and what the effect would have been had we had to put money back. And I was sort of taken aback by how important that will be. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that had we been impacted by Tabor previously, it would have been in excess of $600 million. We would have had to,
that's my understanding over, what is it, like a period of 12 or it was since 2008 or something.
Yeah. We've got that money just hanging around, don't we?
Yeah, I don't think we'll miss it.
Definitely. Well, good. Good. I appreciate that. So any other comments on our ad hoc committees? Anybody have any ideas of things you all would like to see addressed in some deeper fashion? If you do, you can let me know. But Director, Second Vice Chair Catlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I inquired of Melanie earlier as to the status of the DTP litigation. And
Right.
at one point, a committee had been set up, an ad hoc committee consisting of Doug Tisdale and myself. Do we need to formally dissolve that, or is that still ongoing? It was an ad hoc committee for legal.
I don't know. I would defer to our general counsel to find out whether an ad hoc committee has a shelf life if it's not stated.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was not ever technically dissolved, but really that committee, as I understand it, was put together to have two directors be hearing about sort of how the litigation was developing. Since that trial completed and we're just waiting on the judge's decision, I don't know that there's really any utility in continuing to have it, but certainly the board, that's your prerogative if you wanted to do that. The committee hasn't been meeting because there's just been no activity and anything to meet about.
That was the purpose of my question. I didn't want to be derelict in my duties as an ad hoc committee member, not having met for over a year.
Yeah. So if the chair gets to appoint ad hoc committees, can the chair dissolve an ad hoc committee? Can I just dissolve that committee right now?
Yes, you can. And under the bylaws, any ad hoc committee that doesn't dissolve at a date certain dissolves at the end of the year that it was put in place.
Okay.
The one exception was the redistricting, which we
Right.
did do a board action on to keep that intact through the full process.
Okay, so no action is necessary, right?
Thanks for the clarification.
Great. And Treasurer Whitmore, hands up.
Just one quick thought, and certainly not needed to discuss, but we had our safety and security ad hoc committee last year, or 19, I can't remember. Just a thought, would that need to be something we think about with all of our Union Station struggles and all that? I'm guessing at this point not, because our staff is handling it very well, but just a thought, be up to Chair and Deborah, obviously. Thanks.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes, thank you very much, Director Whitmore. Great question. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for providing me the opportunity to address it. I would highly suggest that we do not convene an additional committee. I have been working in earnest with a myriad of people from the city and county of Denver. And at this juncture, we're trying to streamline to have intentional focus as relates to mitigating some issues. Director Rivera Malpiedi has been engaged in those discussions and has made a commitment to liaise with all of you as we reconvene next week. I just had a meeting yesterday with the administration and have another meeting on Monday. So at this point in time, I don't think there is a direct need in relationship to that in regards to what we're doing moving forward. But as I've made a commitment to the chair, I have been keeping him apprised and will do so in the course of my board reports to all of you, my general manager's reports, and will advise if at a time there needs to be some type of ad hoc committee to address any mitigating efforts that we're trying to put into place. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam GMCO. Yeah, and Director Rivera Malpiedi has indicated that she wants this to be her laser focus for this coming year, and to the extent she's willing and able to do that and work with our GMCEO, I'm all for it. So sounds good. Any other questions before we move on? Any other discussion needed with regard to ad hoc committees at this point in time? Okay, we'll move on to other matters. The first item under other matters is our retreat discussion. And I know that board office staff is trying to secure the venue for our retreat on March 26. As soon as the location is finalized, the board office will email a placeholder reminder to the board. Anything else we need to be talking about with regard to the retreat? First Vice Chair Geisinger.
Sure, thanks. I talked with Barbara this morning, and I guess an update from you, Ms. Johnson, would be helpful in terms of, I think there's like a process for an on-call facilitator or something that we're working on. Is that, I guess I'm just looking for an update. Are we moving forward with posting the RFP and is the SOW, is the scope of work finalized? And
So thank you very much for the question, Director Geisinger. I've not had any conversations with anybody assembled virtually on the screen as it relates to the status. You're making reference to on-call contracting that is active, so I cannot speak to that in this forum. That was a separate effort that we could potentially leverage, but out of respect for open and fair competition, it would not be appropriate for me to address that at this time. But specific to the retreat, I do not know the status of any type of scope of work outside of the comments that I provided to you and to the former chair, as well as to Ms. Manis in December. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I misquoted or anything like that. Ms. McManus, maybe you and I could get together that and just see where we are with the scope of work. I think Chair Busick was interested to see it. Is that right?
You bet. So if you, First Vice Chair Geisinger, if you could take the lead on that and make sure that stuff is moving along, that'd be great.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Anything else on our retreat discussion? We're just going to have one this year, which is kind of a change. We used to have two all the time, which I'll leave it at that. Anyway, next is our government relations discussion. General Manager Johnson, would you or your staff like to discuss how this is going to be coming forward with this?
Yeah, so
executive
thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and for all those that are assembled. Once again, Deborah Johnson, General Manager and CEO. Director Busick and I did have a conversation as we talked about the different qualifiers relative to this committee, and that we would have a formalized agendized item. And right now it's under other matters, recognizing that the General Assembly has convened and is in session. I do have Michael Davies on this call that could provide a broad brush overview. As we go forward, we will provide a written report to all of you as it relates to the activities that have been ensuing. Quite naturally, there's quite a bit of discussion around some impending legislation, and I did communicate to all of you the latter part of last week as it pertained to that, and reached out to specific members of the board that represent the district in which there could be some implications. So with that, I would like to ask Michael Davies, our government relations officer, to provide a brief and succinct update on government relations activities. Mr. Davies, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, members of the board. So for just a quick update on government relations, obviously last week the General Assembly came into session, and a number of bills are starting to get introduced, not many of them scheduled yet for hearings. The two that I would flag, that so far that are introduced, one General Manager Johnson mentioned, and that is the Town of Parker's inclusion or exclusion election bill, and that is the same as last year's bill. It's being introduced by Senator Smallwood this year instead of Senator Ransom. So that's largely the only change from last year, and so we'll certainly be tracking that very closely. And then the other bill was a bill that went through the interim committees this summer and is being offered by Senator Hansen and a few other representatives as well, but Senator Hansen is the primary sponsor there, and it is to alter the existing tax credit that goes to employers who buy transit passes for employees. And so this is to, largely the report over the summer was to look to modernize and see where they can make changes to existing tax credits. And it wasn't being utilized very much. And the hope behind this bill is to change that, reform the tax credit, and see if we can make it a useful and well-utilized tax credit that does encourage businesses to buy transit passes for their employees. So those are the two state bills. At the federal level, we're certainly just tracking implementation of the IIJA, or the bipartisan infrastructure law. It's often referred to as both. And largely FTA at this point is just trying to staff up. They do have a number of guidance and regulatory questions that they put out. And so RTD is certainly tracking those and making sure that we interact well with the grant processes and regulations that come down from FTA. And otherwise, the full fiscal year 22 appropriations bill must be approved by Congress. And this is important in respect to implementing the full funding figures of the IIJA. Currently, the federal government is running on a continuing resolution that goes through late February. And the hope is that Congress will get together, pass a full omnibus appropriations bill that will cover the full year of FY22 and realize the IIJ funding levels, which of course creates that increase in the formula funding that we get from FTA to RTD. And happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Davey, just as clarification, once again, if in fact there is not a full-fledged reauthorization bill, omnibus bill, we will not see the positive effects of the IIJA. So I just want to be clear in reference to the CR. I constantly get questions from the media, and we hear that in this sphere that we're anticipated to receive all this money, but if Congress does not act, it's based upon the previous year's funding levels, which would keep them status quo. Correct, Mr. Davies?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, so thank you very much.
Thanks very much. And okay, Director Geising.
Thanks, Michael. I think Michael's doing a great job on all of this. Troy and I are in the Tuesday morning meetings, and I just thought people might be interested if you wanted to mention where we are on the CRP fix as well.
Yes, certainly. That at the federal level is included in largely the bills that have been passed through House and Senate separately, but because they both are in the authorizing language, it was approved and authorizing through IIJA. So that is there, and now the final step there is to basically get that actually included in the appropriation, and that will also hopefully be a part of and a key part of the full FY22 omnibus package.
Thanks.
Yes.
Treasurer Whitmore?
Thanks, Chair. Michael, how long have you been with the agency? Year?
Almost a year, about 10 days short of a year.
Okay. Well, to play on the beginning of first Vice Chair Geisinger's comment, I just want to acknowledge Michael's skill set. He hit the ground running, but he is sped up. His acumen with our federal lobbyists is quite high, and it is definitely reassuring. He speaks their language and understands that, and also is, getting to know the players very quickly at the state capitol as well. So I just wanted to say in front of Deborah and this committee, I really appreciate your efforts. You're doing a good job for us, and I find a great deal of comfort in your skill set backing us up. So kudos.
Thank you very much for the kind words.
Thanks for those comments. And Michael and I had a good discussion. Was it last week? Must have been last week. And so I've asked Michael to be present at all of our executive committee meetings to update us on our government relations function, right? So unfortunately, we have the old, and I mean not age-wise, not chronologically, we have the old government relations committee as part of our executive committee. We have Treasurer Whitmore, First Vice Chair Geisinger, and they're continuing to do their Tuesday morning briefings and all that. So we'll be getting regular updates. If there is something that everybody, Michael Davies, thinks needs to happen, they'll let us know, and we'll take it from there. Any other, GM Johnson? Yes.
Yes, so thank you very much. And I do appreciate the acknowledgement of Michael Davies. Basically, he does have the acumen that was needed. And I know there was some trepidation and angst with him being outside of this area, but knew good and well that he could hit the ground running, because what you know, and you can easily bring yourself up to speed in reference to the geographic region. With that being said, one thing for certain that has been implemented during his tenure is a report that's that will continue to be disseminated to all of you since we're back in session, tracking the bills. And so I just wanted to clarify that will be ongoing, will not cease. It will be supplemented as it relates to these briefings that we have here, so the full board can be privy to what's happening at that level, both regionally, state, and at the federal level. So thank you.
Thanks for those comments. And in the past, we used to have the Government Relations Committee give a report at our board meeting, I think. Did we? And do we need to do something at our board meetings or not? Only as needed?
Mr. Bisick, if I may, I will confer and, report back, because I think case in point, I have a general manager report, as I spoke with Mr. Davies about, that would come and I would yield the floor to him. So that could be a regular occurrence. I don't think it needs to be compartmentalized. Yeah. Thank you.
Sounds great. No, that's great. Thanks. Okay. Let's see. Anything further on government relations? How this works with us, the executive committee, now kind of taking on that role? Nope. Good. Okay. I had some email communication with Director Deschel, and he talked about the possibility of having the chat feature activated in our meetings, and also the closed captioning feature. And is there anyone that can help us understand pros, cons, whatever, with regard to those things happening?
I would refer, Mr. Chair, I would say for Melanie Snyder, a conversation had ensued as it relates to the chat feature, recognizing that there could be some implications with that. So Ms. Snyder, if you could address that, please.
Yes, thank you. So I was actually communicating with Barbara McManus today and with Gabe Christie and Catherine Grove and our civil rights team. We'll take up that conversation again, and
Good.
we're happy to bring back some options to this group.
Okay.
Provide a little bit more information about that.
Any sense of the timeline in responding to that, so I can get back to Director Deschel?
We can bring it before the committee next month if is that too long, or
Well,
we're here at your pleasure.
If that's how much time you need, then that's fine. I'll let him know.
Okay, if we have something that we can circulate via
Yeah.
email, I could probably do that as well.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks so much for that. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Any other matters, Secretary Sloan?
Yes, thank you for recognizing me, Chair. I do have an issue I'd like to bring up. And first, I'd like to add a little background to how it came up. And that is the Jeffco directors. And we didn't mean to exclude your piece of Westminster as a Jeffco director. So now you're included in this. But Directors Cook, Catlin, and I were interested in having a general discussion about how to better serve the Jeffco County community. And we plan to just have an informal meeting to discuss ways to improve connections between RTD directors and elected county and municipal officials and reach an informal, very general consensus on how to approach it. Now, my home in Golden is pretty much a midway point between Peggy and Shelley's homes, and much more convenient than meeting at RTD offices downtown. And because of the Omicron variant, we didn't, it didn't seem to be a good idea to spend it lengthy period in a public place while we were talking. So because there were 3 of us, we intended to comply with the Open Meetings Act requirements of notice and availability to other board members and the public. But after discussing ramifications of this with the great help of General Counsel Snyder, I locked the door and I didn't let Peggy or Shelley in, even though they were really hungry. But based on Council's comments, I understand that a discrete group of directors meeting about an identified issue is not within the customs of RTD, and that another group had been told that such a meeting was unacceptable and that it led to great complications in discussions between staff and the group and amongst the group, because as we all know, that gets lengthy, complicated, and in fact, fairly easy to not comply with the Open Meetings Act. Ms. Snyder also advised that both the board governance manual and operating guidelines are to be reviewed annually, although no review was conducted in 2020. So this led me through reading through the board documents with a view to amending them by adding a provision for an informal meeting of identified directors on a designated issue in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. And in my review, I learned that the guidelines do expect directors to act consistently with board established customs and practices, but also that for meeting purposes, directors should engage in discussions outside of and prior to meetings with fellow members in order to gain understanding, answer questions, and solve problems that can be addressed without the entire board. So I am proposing this addition in a review of our board documents. And while reading the documents, I realized that they contain many other provisions that are outdated including a mission statement that doesn't reflect the strategic plan, a description of our former committee structure, and no mention of the land acknowledgement in the description of meeting practices. So I realized last night at our JEDI meeting that staff is already proceeding with a review of these documents. So I would just urge the executive committee to schedule this review. And I would be happy to work on it in any capacity people would like me to. That's it. I know I took a long time, but I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for those comments. Second Vice Chair Catlin, please.
Thank you, Director Sloan. That was very well.
And Peggy, is she frozen for everybody or just me?
I think she's frozen.
We can't hear you and your video image is locked. Okay, let's move on. If Peggy gets her technical difficulties squared away, we'll call on her again. So with regard to I guess the question I would have of staff with regard to the annual document review that we didn't do last year, how does that gone in the past? I seem to remember at one point when Director Tisdale was the chair that he kind of took that under his wing, but I'm not sure if that's accurate. So if anybody has any historical reference, that'd be great.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
So I wasn't here at the time, but there was a resolution passed by the board in 2019 that was following a retreat. And so that's the resolution that Director Sloan is talking about. And that's the one where the board revisited the operating guidelines and adopted those. So it looks like it was Director Tisdale and Director Walker that were the directors that were involved in moving that forward.
Okay, so Director Sloan, would you be willing to work with staff in moving that forward this year?
I would be happy to do that.
Consider yourself appointed to that role.
Thank you.
Director Geisinger?
I would be happy to help. I'd be happy to help if Director Sloan would like to.
Okay, so there you go. Sounds great. Everybody okay with that? And Peggy's not here. Try me. Okay, good. Great. Sounds good to me. Let's see. We don't, Director Sloan, you're not looking for a response today with regard to the informal meeting thing. You think that's going to be resolved or discussed as part of the document modifications, right?
I suspect Peggy was going to comment on the informal meeting idea, but I think it can all be rolled into one project.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, got it. I don't see Peggy coming back on. Has anybody heard from her?
So Director Catlin, her computer died. I just sent her the information to dial in.
Okay. Let's wait a minute for Second Vice Chair Catlin to come back in and see what she wanted to say. While we're waiting, does anybody have anything else they want to discuss or talk about? Other matter-wise?
Cue the Jeopardy music, I guess. Oh, there's Director Davidson.
Oh, Eric Davidson, Director Davidson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Apologies for not being on video here. Actually, just a question related to my raising the hand. I know this has come up a couple of times, but with us moving to the new committee structure, do we have a formal agreement on other director participation in committees of which they're not a part, which I'm doing right now? So obviously not voting, but in discussion items and questions. I guess I'm just wondering if we have an established protocol for that.
I'll defer to staff, but my understanding is the directors that are not a member of a committee are welcome to participate, but not to vote. So I don't know if that's, Ms. Snyder, is that stated in the revised bylaws?
The bylaws, yes, Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
the bylaws do
okay.
talk about that it's the committee members that vote. And then
Right.
this group also had a conversation specifically saying that other directors could participate as well as attend the meetings.
Right. Does that answer your question, Director Davidson?
It does. Thank you, Chair.
Perfect.
Appreciate it.
Good, good. You bet.
Thanks, Ms. Snyder.
I am still not seeing Second Vice Chair Catlin. Give her just 2 more minutes and we're going to roll.
I have Director Catlin on my phone. She's going to make her statement to the board through my team's meeting.
Thank you, Barbara, and I apologize. I'm getting ready to throw my computer out the window. This was not important, but thanks for hanging on. I just wanted to say that there is also a little sliver of Jefferson County that falls within Director Deschelle's district. So there, in fact, are 5 of us that we thought we wanted to create an environment and get together with a group of other elected officials in Jefferson County, very similar to the NADA group that you all enjoy up north. So that's kind of what our intent was.
Thanks for those comments, Second Vice Chair Catlin, and thanks for getting back in and joining us. Great. Okay. With that said, are there any final comments under other matters from anybody? Seeing none, no further discussion. The meeting is adjourned at 12:43 p.m. Thanks everybody for attending.
Thank you,
Bye, Director Catlin.
Barbara. Sorry about this.